My name is Eric Bahn, and I'm one of the co-founders at Hustle Fund, joined by my other co-founder, Elizabeth. And welcome to today's session, which is called Real Founders Pitch a VC. Okay, so if you've ever met my co-founder, Elizabeth, you'll realize that she has absolutely no filter. That's one of the things I really love about her, is that she's unapologetically speaking her mind and delivers feedback so directly, but still tactfully for the most part.
Sometimes.
And that's why I gave her the nickname of the Velvet Hammer, which you're going to see drop in a moment. So make no mistake, though, that Elizabeth is a bit of an anomaly when it comes to the VC industry. I guess, first of all, unfortunate because, not unfortunate, but she is a woman and less than 5% of general partners in our industry are women. So that, unfortunately, is an anomaly. Hustle Fund, by the way, is one of those women-led teams. I work with 2 women on the general partnership. But she's an anomaly primarily because VCs just love dancing around and giving founders nonsensical and indirect feedback. Let me know how I can help. And just like, that's that kind of trope and all that stuff. Well, not today. Okay, today we're going to listen to 3 talented founders and give it to them straight on what we think about their pitch and their business. We're going to make this constructive and helpful, and we hope that everyone, the founders as well as our guests, are able to walk away with a sense of how to hone your pitch and your business better to VCs. So what I want to do is first take a look at today's agenda. I'm going to quickly introduce ourselves. I think I can do this in under 1 second. You can time me. We're going to go through the pitches themselves, and then we're going to have a little bit of time at the very end to have a Q&A from the audience, as well as hear your reactions. So a little bit of a logistical check here. This is a Zoom session. So if you have a question, please direct it to the Q&A portion of the Zoom frame. Not the chat. It's gonna be a little bit hard for us to follow on the chat, but please use the chat to make like your snarky comments about us and make fun of Elizabeth, AKA Velvet Hammer. And maybe even just to start by sharing like, where are you based right now? What are you working on? It's always nice to see who's in the crowd. Okay, so before we begin and I start to actually introduce and give time to our founders, I want to just make a shout out to our incredible ongoing sponsors, NetSuite. We don't get to operate in an island doing this work on our own. We have to rely on the amazing support of partners, and NetSuite is sort of our ride or die at this point. So let me tell you a little bit about NetSuite. NetSuite gives early stage companies the confidence to tackle the fundraising process head on. Startups are equipped with real-time financial visibility, KPIs, workflows, dashboards, and reports for the daily strategic planning, crucial to improving business performance and attracting investor interest. Not to mention, NetSuite's dedicated venture capital practice and extensive partner network provide a supportive infrastructure to help you manage everything from implementation to investor expectations so you can propel your business toward the ideal exit. NetSuite provides all this on a single cloud-based platform, so you can access mission-critical data anywhere at any time, even during your next pitch with Elizabeth. To learn more, visit netsuite.com. We have over 200 companies in our Hustle Fund portfolio. Many of them are happy NetSuite customers. Check them out, netsuite.com. All right, let's start with the intros. This is us, me and Elizabeth. So let's go ahead and talk about the founders and get ready for the pitch. So we have 3 awesome founders who have bravely decided to come up and share their pitch with us, me and Elizabeth. This is how the format's going to work. We have Pavani, who is the Chief Impact Officer at Acta, followed by Aaron, who is the founder CEO of EasyNet, and then Christina, who's going to wrap things up. She's the founder and CEO of Viager. We're going to give each founder 5 minutes to go through their pitch. Okay, then there's going to be 5 minutes of Q&A with me and Elizabeth. And then there's 5 minutes of open Q&A where Mike is going to come back and then bring up some of your questions that you would like to follow up with each of these founders. So that is the format. We're going to do this 3 times, starting with Pavani. Pavani, I've already seen you on the screen. Welcome. And if that works for everyone, why don't we go ahead and get started, and I can go ahead and share the slides for Acta. So Pavani, welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Eric. Excited to be here.
Yeah. All right. So let me get my timer started. I'm going to be a bit stickler when it comes to the 5 minutes, but whenever you're ready, and I'll start the timer.
Perfect, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Think back to the last time you tried to use a public service. It could have been when you went to the DMV to renew your license or tried to get a permit on your new home renovation. I'd bet our entire runway that you didn't get exactly what you wanted. Long wait times, confusing instructions. It's no wonder that government has the worst ranked customer service out of all the sectors. And here's the kicker: we're the ones funding those services. Every year, the US federal, state, and local government spends 5 trillion taxpayer dollars on public services. Are we getting the best bang for our buck? Slide. Overnight, local governments were forced to digitize their services. They put together a patchwork of homegrown and legacy systems that created a major customer service gap. We were the first to interview 68 local governments about their pain points. And we quickly found that officials spend 60% of their days in their inboxes, reading and responding to citizen inquiries. Because of the sheer volume, 20% of these inquiries were getting left unanswered, leaving projects in limbo, decreasing service outputs, decreasing revenue, and decreasing the overall department's capacity to deliver services. As a result, our customers' are angry, making this problem the highest priority in our customers' pain stack. Slide. So we asked these governments what their ideal future state would look like, and here's what they said. First, they would need to be able to route inquiries from multiple channels and manage them in the same place. They would need to be able to identify bottlenecks in real time and respond to citizen inquiries with more consistent communications and better services. Slide. So our solution brings governments to their ideal future state by automating customer service communications. We respond to citizen inquiries so governments can respond to citizens' needs. When an inquiry comes to our government partner, our solution triages and auto-responds to the inquiry. And our solution also gives our partner intelligence on how to fix their most recurring bottlenecks. We use predictive analytics to make sure that our partners can offer seamless customer service and free up time so they can increase their service delivery and their revenue. Slide. Our early adopters say that we fill market gaps that our legacy competitors create. These systems brought governments online with little to no customer service functionality and poor UX that resulted in an unprecedented volume of customer inquiries. One of these systems, Tyler Tech, owns 13% of the market and makes $1.2 billion in ARR. That's just a fraction of the market that we can capture because we're addressing pressing pain points that our legacy competitors create. Slide. And that's why our market is large and sticky. Our TAM is all application-specific software for local and state governments. That sits at $20 billion. And based on our projected SaaS pricing, we can capture 14% of that market. Slide. And we've acquired paying clients with a very, very low cash burn rate. When COVID hit, we iterated our product and hustled 25K in revenue. We sent 173 cold emails, got a 22% response rate, which resulted in 68 interviews and 9 pilots that then represent 166K in potential ARR. Our beachhead market building departments are quickly referring us to other departments within their city, which gives us high confidence that we've honed in on a strong problem solution fit. Slide. And that's why we're building a repeatable sales process in government. We can afford to offer flexible phase 1 contracts that our legacy competitors can't. We're also the only women and minority-owned firm in the space, qualifying us for a large and growing segment of set-aside businesses. And we're leveraging direct email and peer-to-peer referrals to maximize our reach. Slide. We're also the perfect team to bring this to market. I've worked in local government and economic development, handling citizen inquiries. Our CEO is a local elected official, giving us unique insight into the pain points and procurement behavior of our target customer. And our CTO comes armed with research experience in machine learning and software engineering experience from Amazon. Slide. And we're backed by advisors who have proven results in the public sector and venture space. Slide. This capital will give us the 18 months of runway we need to reach the $1.2 million mark at the end of the period. Slide. Local governments have gone online. Now what? Acta Solutions is bringing the CX revolution to governments. So the next time you're wondering where to get your marriage license or your property tax valuation, Acta Solutions will be the one ensuring that you get an accurate and prompt response. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Pavani. Let's give it up for Pavani and Acta Solutions in the chat. Some virtual claps there. And not too shabby, 4 minutes, 59 seconds, 0.45. So, you could have gone a little bit longer to hit your 5 minutes, basically what I'm saying. I'm just kidding. Terrific job, though. Elizabeth, do you want to start with any comments or questions you have for Pavani and Acta?
Yeah. First off, I'm very impressed. A clarification question. The 9 pilots, are any of them paying? What is sort of the state of that? And can you talk a little bit more about your customer persona as well? I mean, government is as big as a whole. Are there particular areas that you're either going after first or that you're focused on, or even the type of person you sell to?
Yeah, great question. So I'll answer those in reverse. Our persona, so our beachhead, we're starting in the building departments, and we chose them because they act the most like a private sector client. So most of the decision makers have come from private sector, so they're able to make decisions fast, and that's a way that we found to mitigate the notorious long government sales cycle. And we've also found that they have specific metrics, so they're evaluated on responsiveness to their customer. So if we can prove our value in this beachhead market, it can translate to an enterprise solution to the larger city easily, since they're often most listened to by the city manager or the mayor, because they're bringing in a lot of the revenue from development that's going on. And then the paid pilots, so 3 of them right now are looking to be paid. And then we're pressure testing the pricing with the other ones. So all of them most likely will result in phase 1 contracts, like I mentioned, based on metrics that we hit during the pilot.
Great. I'm just going to give you some. Oh, go ahead, Eric. Eric?
Actually, why don't you continue the comments? It seems like you're on a roll there. Go ahead.
Just honing in, I think, on this one thing. So I actually think that you have a lot of really awesome stuff here, but what you just articulated actually will make it so much stronger. So here's kind of where I would lead with this. I think when you start the pitch and everybody hears GovTech, like all the VCs are like, oh no, like this is such a terrible sales cycle. But my recommendation, and maybe Eric disagrees with me on this, you guys have a background, and it didn't come out until the end in government. So you know the ins and outs. And I think how you articulated just this last point of like, we actually know what areas of government move the fastest and why. So I would actually probably flip some things around in the story. This is from a storytelling perspective, not changing the business, but just, hey, we had this background in government. Everyone knows the problem with government. So you can probably go through that quickly, but like we have this background in government. We know that in general government moves slow, but here's this like one sort of beachhead that moves really fast because they are evaluated based on customer service, and they are not knocking it out of the park right now. And we know this because we have this great, team that has this background, and then kind of launch into the other things. Because I think that's going to be the biggest question you're going to get. And I think I'll pause there and flip it over to Eric.
Yeah, just wanted to echo this sentiment. The strongest flex I saw on this entire presentation, which you delivered really well, is actually this team slide, right? And when it comes to early stage investing, it's like 70%, in my view, a bet on the team itself. So when you just start, like put the slide 9 to like slide 1 of just like, this is who we are. Like we have really deep experiences and network in public sector. I think that's like a great way to actually begin this entire story. The other part that I kind of want to just highlight a little bit was a comment that Elizabeth made, which is I generally get personally freaked out by GovTech for all the reasons that stereotype VCs do. It's just like long sales cycle, like really kind of murky decision-making process. All that jazz. The upside of it's great though. It's just like if you get a contract that's like a decade long or something or more, you just are there forever. So if you want to just like take a strategy in your pitch, is just preempting that question, which is like, look, you probably think like, oh gosh, another GovTech, just like Elizabeth said, but like here's why our experiences and network allows us to cut through the noise super quickly. Just sort of like preempting like the big hairy gorilla 800-pound gorilla kind of question. I think that's going to just really nail it for VCs. But overall, I think this is like really compelling and it's great delivery. Just really well done. Actually, before we kind of open it up to questions, I don't know, Pavani, you had a question back for us.
Yeah, I mean, my question going into this was we've heard from other people that GovTech is like a radioactive word. My thing is, we don't want to focus so much on this beachhead because our tool has a wide variety of applications across governments, and our early adopters are saying that. So I guess what's the strongest way to deliver that punch of saying, we're starting in a place where we are evaluated well and can prove our success and value, but how do we blow it up in a way that both undercuts that GovTech perception, but also shows the true potential and stickiness of the market?
Yeah, good question. So like a part of me is just like, well, if you're going to be building a GovTech story, then just be like hyper focused on what it is, right? The problem, and actually I did this as a founder too, was like different investors have different expectations or goals for their companies. So I might say like, oh man, this solution is great. What if you applied this to this kind of private sector thing like oil and gas or whatever? And then Elizabeth's like, you talk to her next day, she's like, oh man, GovTech, hell yeah. Like this is my wheelhouse, babe. Like it's just like, and it's just like, well, how do I even like craft the story that's going to capture both? I think the reality in this situation would be like, let's not talk to Eric because he's a distraction. Right. And let's focus on Elizabeth, who actually can add real value. And then let's, hit the milestone that we want to reach with this business for this fundraise, and then reassess the story. Maybe after making like $5 million of annual revenue, you do want to bring it to like a little bit of a wider sector when it's appropriate at that point. But this is your journey. And VCs really love to impose their journey on you. Yeah. Okay, Elizabeth, you're nodding, but let's try to grab a question from the audience here. Mike, is there a question that someone wants to raise for Pavani or for us?
We've got a lot of questions for Pavani, so I'll try to summarize some of the more popular ones. A lot of people want to know if you have any apprehension about selling to government and the regulations that you might have to face.
Great question. Well, as anyone selling to government, yes, but our product works with emails primarily to start with, which, when they reach a staff person's inbox, they're all public record. And we're building our product, our CTO comes with industry standard experience. So we're building a product that meets those regulations. But at the end of the day, local government staff are burdened, and they're even more burdened now, and that's not going to change. So our number one priority is to be able to work with them and serve them in a way so they can meet their customers' needs.
Makes sense. And another question for both Pavani and the panelists is, your presentation didn't go super deep into product. Is that something that perhaps you should have done more, and people are kind of curious where the product is right now?
I'll take this one. So from an investor's perspective, I think, different things matter to different investors. And this is why, you should definitely be prepared to answer these questions if they come up. But I think that when I look at ideas, I like to kind of think of things in a couple of different buckets. One is like, is the problem more customer acquisition, or is the problem more of the product? And in this particular case, I think it's more customer acquisition. Just like the immediate thoughts are like GovTech, long sales cycles. How are you going to get on the first rung? That kind of thing. Less so about, do I believe the team can build the software? Do I believe they can navigate regulations? And especially with their background and knowing what to build, I'm less concerned about that. So I think as far as the fact that they didn't include it, for me, and maybe Eric will challenge me on this one, I think it's not an issue.
I'll make this comment next, and Pavani, I'll let you wrap this one up, and we can move on after to Aaron. So at our fund, I sort of speak for all of us. I guess mostly for myself. I don't speak for Elizabeth. I can't speak for the Velvet Hammer, but like we really care about distribution more so than product at our fund. And that's actually something that I think you really did well over five minutes, is sort of talking about like your ability to close pilots and building the conviction that like they'll turn into paid pilots and so forth. We think at our fund, and this could be completely wrong, that for a lot of software, especially SaaS software, the product part of it is usually not the blocker. Like we think we're entering an age where like building product, even no code product, is pretty effective, but getting to sales and distribution is a huge blocker. And we would prefer to bet on the team that is more oriented towards like the sales and retention and the building of the going concern more so than the technology itself, which of course is still important, but I'd more heavily weight on the sales part of it. So for us, like in our biases, I think that actually, Pavani, you made a really good case. Pavani, I'll let you have the last word before we move on to Aaron on that question, if you have any comments.
Yeah, what we found that cuts down the notoriously long government sales cycle from 3 months to 1 month is a clear articulation of problem solution fit. They just want to know that you hear their problems and you can solve them. So where our product is right now is we're co-developing it with our partners, and we're doing it with influencer governments so that when they're happy with what we're doing and we're hitting those metrics, they'll refer us on to other governments in their region. And that's our product and sales strategy together.
Fantastic. Well, Pavani, thank you so much for kicking things off. Can we get some big claps, virtual claps for Pavani? And please stick around. We'll hopefully have a little bit of Q&A at the very end. And Aaron, thank you so much for showing your screen. Welcome to the stage here. Whenever you're ready, let me know and I can begin the timer. And we'd love to hear about your business, EasyNet.
All right, go ahead and start the timer.
All right,
thanks for having me. My name's Erin McKeon. I'm the founder and CEO of EasyNet. First of all, Eric and team, I'm so thrilled that you just finished raising your round, and Elizabeth for taking a moment out of your 24-hour clubhouse to share time with us. So in April 2020, 2 men attempted to steal Lori Tate's purse in a parking lot outside of Seattle. And as they drove away, they hit her with their car, and she sadly died 2 days later. Her grieving husband and their 13-year-old son didn't have her iCloud password, and it took 7 months, a court order, and appealing to the local news before Apple finally granted them access to their more than 9,000 photos, videos, their family memories. Next slide. You'd think that this would be an edge case, but unfortunately it's not. Estate planning professionals have told me that this is the #1 issue that's facing the families they work with today, especially now that most of us have more files online than we even have in our office. Especially among the boomer population who are increasingly online, their lack of digital estate planning means that their families are having to fight for access to their online accounts, and it's exacerbating the already 570 hours it takes to settle an estate. Next slide. So that's where EasyNet comes in. We're like an easy button for your internet with effortless everyday password management coupled with long-term peace of mind. So rather than having to regurgitate a bunch of information and remember to keep it up to date, EasyNet makes it effortless to see your online life today and for your family to see it in the future. Next slide. Even before we expand to other demographics and expand globally, our target audience in the boomer population, which is those who are using the internet and who have done their will, since clearly they're already making those plans for their family. Our target population is already over 28 million prospects. Next slide. Although we are a direct-to-consumer product at our core, we are choosing to approach the market via strategic partnerships for faster growth and referred trust, and that's also where my background is. We'd love to talk with you more about our go-to-market plan if you're interested in talking further, but in the interest of time, we're going to skip ahead so we can talk about the good stuff. So next slide. Oh, you're already there. So our traction. So far, we're at about 2,800 paying subscribers and over 35 estate planners and financial advisors that are referring clients to us. You can see our pricing model there. And of course, we'd be happy to delve in further at a follow-up meeting. Next slide. So why do people love us? It's because we take a lot of the disparate pieces that people are already using in their lives today and combine a lot of that into a single user-friendly interface. So document storage, password management, journaling, online organization, and estate details, all in a single tool that they're using every day, so it constantly stays up to date. So next slide. And Eric, I'm going to have you click on that. Hopefully this will work because I want to show you how it actually looks. So you can see what that dashboard looks like. So
unfortunately, that's going to be really tough to do.
We
may have to just stick to the slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you can see there, all of your slides are categorized. If you could see the video, when you click on any of those and click into a specific vault, it takes you to that login page and auto-fills your username and password. Document storage is similarly organized so that there are categories. You can add notes to either passwords or to documents. You can share documents with trusted users. And then there's a journaling feature to capture your memories and your stories, and a legacy worksheet to capture those critical details that people just forget to pass on. So next slide. So our team knows and loves technology. My co-founder and I have a combined 30 years in technology and a strong foundation in startups. And we recognize that the need for digital estate planning is going to skyrocket over the next 3 to 5 years. And we really feel like we're well positioned to capture a healthy chunk of that market. Next slide. So that's why we're seeking funding at this point. We're seeking $1 million to accelerate growth and ensure that our product is the de facto solution in this space. We're going to be investing in sales and marketing, adding 2 more full-time developers, and adding phone support as a paid add-on. Next slide. So as I mentioned, digital estate planning is really going to be big in the next 3 to 5 years. And I really encourage you to invest in a company in this space, even if ultimately you decide that we're not the right fit. That said, I truly believe we have the team with the most experience and the most hustle with the best product. Next slide. And if you're interested in chatting further, I welcome another meeting. Thanks so much for your time.
Let's get some virtual claps here on the chat for Aaron. Great job there. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, AKA Hammer Time. Drop it.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. I think probably the question that a lot of investors ask you is like, how do you see this as differentiated from like a LastPass or any of those? Since I understand the angle of the use case is different and they may be more general, they still kind of achieve the same thing. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the UI. What you tend to see is, especially in the boomer population, most of them are not currently using any kind of password management because they didn't grow up with technology. And really the password managers that are out there were built by techies for techies. And so what our approach we took was really around, we need something that everyone can be comfortable using and that it's simple for children of boomers to help them implement, and then also seamlessly pass that on to their next of kin through our legacy contact functionality.
I have a comment on this. So really quick side story. I'm in the process of doing my taxes, and my accountant just opened up this new portal, which I love. It like 10x the speed of like my tax prep this year. And I was asking them like, how's the feedback been? And they said like, it's actually been a nightmare. And the reason why is they serve primarily boomer population people. And they're like, they don't get any of the icons. We basically have to be on the phone with them the entire time, just like walking them through this stuff. And so I think your comment around the UI is actually pretty valid. And I actually had an idea for you. This actually happened to me in a pitch recently, which is, we couldn't do this given the format today, but when you talk to an investor, you may want to create like a playground field, which is just like, here, I created this account for you. Log in right now. Okay. Share your screen and log in right now. Mm-hmm. All right. Now I want you to click on this, and just like give people a taste of what this experience looks like for a very boomer optimized, digital assets safe. Mm-hmm. And I think actually that show not tell part of it could really help.
Yeah, I love that.
So just think of that as an idea. But being forced for me to share my screen was actually really huge, and being like, oh my gosh, I totally believe this now. To mitigate like comments like Elizabeth's, by the way, not to rag on the hammer. One comment here, which is, I thought that your opening statement was pretty amazing, of like, that horrific story. So I usually don't like starting with stories that are like super macabre like that, but it does actually paint like a pretty incredible truth, right? Of just like, this is more common than you think. Right. And the 570 hours thing, I almost felt like was a very big statement that you made in your slide. of just like how long it takes on average to settle a state. So I can immediately see that kind of perspective there. What was I going to? I guess another comment that I'll just share as the last point, which is just like, again, like, because this is early stage, I really highly recommend that you bring team slide up early. Mm-hmm. I'm going to beat this hammer for everyone, basically, or this drum for everyone, which is just like starting with team, I think, is really critical. Mm-hmm. And you have great experiences here. So that's something I would sort of flex earlier on. I don't know, Aaron, if you had a question or comment back for us before we start opening it up to Q&A here.
I really appreciate the feedback on the idea of literally letting the investor play around with it in the meeting. So I absolutely am going to integrate that. Thank you so much.
Can I throw in a suggestion? And I keep in mind, I've only thought about this for like 30 seconds, so maybe a horrible suggestion. But I mean, I think for VCs, it is sometimes hard for them to grasp that going after a niche is a good idea. And I think it's also sometimes hard for VCs to grasp like what the market size for a niche could be. Mm-hmm. My suggestion here would be actually, maybe you frame this as, quote, something bigger, where it's like, you know, you can still have your story about the person dying, but you can be like, you know, one of the reasons why people don't use LastPass or any of those is actually it's just way too hard to use. And when you think about boomers, like, things need to be dead simple. And because actually, I think, just as a side note, I have heard a number of murmurings about how there is a real opportunity to build a user-friendly password manager. Like, that is an opportunity VCs are very interested in, but they're not interested in something niche. So I think the way I would frame it is like, there's this opportunity to build this really awesome, you know, well-designed password manager, and here's why. And clearly nobody's using one because they do exist. They're just bad. And then you can use what kind of some of these other pieces as like, our go-to-market is to start with the strongest use case, which is people really need this for sort of estate planning. And this is how we're using this as go-to-market. So the framing is just slightly different. Obviously the business is the same, but the framing is slightly different, where it's like, this could potentially be used by everyone. People are not using this today because the existing things on the market are horrible. And especially for older people. And, you know, maybe you use like Eric's demo of like how horrible everything is. And here's ours, which is super easy. And then our wedge into the market is this audience. But over time, we will grow it out into everybody. Kind of story is what I'm bringing.
Absolutely.
One last comment here before we can maybe take one question, Mike. But it's my bad. I'm not doing a good job timekeeping here. I'm looking at your traction slide, and the 2,800 paying customers in 10 months is actually really awesome.
Thanks.
And I would like pump that harder and showing maybe like an exponential curve graph of just like, look at our traction to date, because that's actually a serious showing, not telling kind of flex of just like, yo, I'm like bootstrapping this thing and like I already have like 3,000 clients. Like it's working. I'm in a market where like the river current is pulling me forward. So that almost feels like slide 2 to me. It's like, team is amazing. Slide 2, it's like the traction's amazing. And then slide 3 is everything else, right? And that's like 90% of the story right here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's see, Mike, is there like one question we can pose to Aaron before we move on to Christina's pitch?
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions for Aaron, but I think one that jumps out and might resonate with people is in terms of understanding your audience and your customer a little bit better. Do you have a sense of the dynamics for why boomers don't already sign up for password managers, and what specifically is kind of the behavioral block in the market right now, and how might you use that to basically find your refine your product to really get into that niche?
Yeah, it's a combination of the user interface, right? I've talked to a lot of sandwich generation, right? So people with kids, but then their parents are aging as well, who they've tried to get their parents on LastPass or another password manager, and it just became too confusing, right? So the user interface is definitely one piece of it, and then the trust is the other piece, right? And so we obviously have placed security at the very forefront of our mind every step of the way. There's actually a slide that we didn't show because 5 minutes, but on all the security. But using the referred trust from other trusted advisors they're already using is proving to be a successful way to get people engaging. Great question.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Erin, for that.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate your sharing your journey and your slides and your pitch. Thank you. Well done. More virtual claps, please, in the chat.
Thanks.
For Erin and EasyNet. And Christina, thank you for turning on your video. Excited to learn about your journey, Viager. Let me know whenever you're ready, and I can actually, let me go ahead and start sharing your slides first. Yeah, let me know, and then I'll turn on the timer for your 5 minutes.
All right, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
So hi, everyone. Thank you so much. This event is actually quite amazing, but it's actually a product of our time, if you think about it. I mean, we're all home at COVID, staring at screens, pretending to hold up like flowers in our background because we want to look like we're cool. But essentially what we're looking at is a destruction of how we used to do life. And in particular, the travel industry has felt this very strongly. Next slide. So as a travel legal consultant, I have many clients who are influencers, brands, leisure groups, and they've all felt this amazing pitch within the industry. $500 billion has been lost because of two major things: COVID and the confidence that our consumers, the travelers themselves, are lacking. And there's an amazing lost opportunity here. And the only way that we really can see a solution for this is truly empowerment. Next slide. So the way that we see the solution is something that we created first as a consumer product that we actually have pivoted to a SaaS. So what we do is we actually white label our mobile app for travel planners, particularly travel bureaus, travel agents, that provides COVID safety analysis and also live planning content. So in essence, we power up the travel industry by providing them the key to ensure that the travelers are leaving their homes and going back into the economy and feeding it into travel destinations that they used to in the past. Next slide. So what's really important about our product is UI is really important to us. We're a very product-centered startup. For one, we are mostly geared toward women. Women make about 80% of all the travel decisions that there is to make, and that number actually has been growing. So we have consciously created a way, a UI, that really resonates with women and optimize our data to fit particular key demographics to ensure that they're finding the key things that they want to do, but knowing that they have the information to keep them safe. That's what we call our safety shield. That will not only provide COVID safety analysis, but moving forward, also women's safety and LGBTQ safety as well as they're going out and experiencing life again. As part of that, we also have a really great marketplace where we are connecting destination vendors to the travelers, which is a really key component of how we see rebuilding back the travel industry. Next slide. So the market size is really huge. We don't realize how much travel industry is effective in anything until we don't have it any longer. So about $1.2 trillion within the US itself, but on travel technology in particular is about 2.5 billion. So we see a humongous opportunity here, mostly because we are already seeing that the one way that travel destinations can reopen is with this up-to-date information with COVID. So we definitely see easily a 2.5 million to go at scale in the US. And we already have talks with other destinations outside as well. Next slide. So we are looking at two particular streams of revenue here. We're looking at tiered yearly plans based on users for travel brands. Now, we are mostly focusing right now on travel bureaus who are looking to provide their particular city and state with new innovative ways to again, empower their particular traveler to come out of their homes. Right now, we are playing around with the pricing as we're going into our pilots. The second stream that we have is for our marketplace, our match marketplace in particular. And so we are taking about 15 to 20% for each activity that is booked within the application in and of itself. Next slide. And so our go-to-market strategy is actually playing on some of my key strengths, which is actually within my own client base as well. So we are speaking to cities and states and doing particular pilot programs. We're in talks with several different cities right now in implementing what we call neighborhood focus pilots. So looking at the underrepresented neighborhoods that have lost out on quite a bit of the industry's revenue and ensuring that we are feeding back to them with these new matching that we're able to do. We already have a signed partnership with the major women's leader group as well of 40,000 women who are not only influencers, but also business owners within their own right. Additionally, we're also looking at insurance providers as well too. Next slide. This is our traction. We have over 1,000 listings. We're looking at 320 beta users on our waiting list. Next slide. And our leadership, we're a kick-ass team. We have an awesome engineering and growth team and award-winning advisors as well too. And lastly, we're fundraising $300,000 to expand our pilot program because of the increased demand. And so if anyone is interested, feel free to contact me next for 18 months. Thank you so much.
There you go. There's my unmute button. Yay, good job, Christina.
Thank you. My
Please
timer went off and I was like, oh God,
No, you did great. It was pretty much right on time. So thank you so much for the pitch. Please share some big claps and shouts to Christina for her pitch of Viager. Elizabeth, do you want to kick us off with any comments for Christina?
Yes, a couple of questions. So you went through this quickly, but I might have missed this part, but it was intriguing when you said you're offering this to your client base.
Yeah, so I'm first an IP attorney. That's my starting point. So I actually have a large client base of travel influencers, travel marketers, and also travel agents. So I'm actually going to them first because they're the ones who've been complaining to me about their particular problems and meeting in what they call this revenge wave of travelers, but they don't have the means to keep them safe. And so this is how we were able to make this pivot to say, okay, we have this particular application, let's give it to you, white label it for you. And so let's make sure that your travelers feel confident going forward.
Just on that point, I think actually that is one thing that will make this stronger, because I think anytime somebody has I don't know what you call it, unfair distribution channel, because you're either connected or in network or, or whatever it is, which in this case, you do have that as initial base. Like I would not gloss over it. I would actually maybe even make a slide about it. Sure. So that's one thought. I think that then a question that's sort of top of mind, because I think we're kind of at an interesting crux with COVID. Like, I guess no one can really predict the future, but we're at a point where I think my personal feeling is we're still kind of in COVID, but once we get over a certain hump, I think everybody's gone so stir crazy that like actually everyone will want to travel. And so I think the question is sort of like, how do you bridge these two worlds where you can convince travel agents who are not doing well that this will help them do well, when it's actually a little bit tenuous that you can make that claim because it's largely driven by COVID, or that's coming soon enough. So I think that's a top of mind question, and I'll throw it back at you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one thing that we've been discussing within the travel industry is going to be the implementation once vaccines really take hold. And one key point of contention is that every state, every country is having different rules in terms of what they're going to be doing for rollout. So they're already anticipating this to be like a 2-year process of just trying to figure out what each country is going to do as they continue doing their rollout. So, but that's still going to raise questions of cleanliness, which is also a major thing that people are looking into. What kind of measures have vendors done in the past to, again, protect their own workers? That's been a conversation as well, too, in terms of how they are doing it. So COVID is still going to be with us for quite a bit of time. And it's about, again, that information, because they're getting asked those questions quite continuously, which is also why we're going not only beyond for COVID safety, but also women's safety and LGBTQ safety and crime stats as well, too, to kind of give a really clear, encompassing feature that answers a couple of different questions at the same time.
Great response. I have sort of two comments here. So one is an idea in terms of maybe a canary in the coal mine of that travel could come back would actually be like, if you get this kind of a question from investors, like, let's take a look at Airbnb for a second. Like if you look at this time last year, they actually were signing like a horrible debt deal because people thought that there's real risk to the business, and that even some people predicted that it was going to collapse and there wouldn't ever be an IPO. But what happened during COVID, even during while COVID was peaking, is people really wanted to get the hell out of their house. And at some point they wanted to take the risk adjusted bet of travel. Now they didn't want to jump on an airplane, but they were staycationing a lot, right? Driving 2, 3, 4 hours to a cabin where they can be by themselves. And we use that, we being Viager, as a kind of like an early sign that once the pandemic and there's a little bit more traction with like the vaccinations and that people have a lot pent up demand to get out. And you did like sort of touch on this, but there might be a data point in the Airbnb story that you can also talk about.
That's a good idea.
I have also a different kind of way to sort of pitch this. If I just feel free to throw this away too. But like, I think the safety angle is actually something that really is interesting to me. So today in San Francisco, there's a wave of hate crimes happening towards Asians. And I think a lot of it is associated to like, connotations that, Asians brought like coronavirus over to the country and like it started turning into like really interesting kind of consequences for the population. San Francisco, I recently learned just 2 years ago, is the most visited US city in terms of tourism, even more than New York. Yeah. And I think a bunch of those people are Asian, like Chinese people, like people in Korea, Japan, who like to go visit and like see what like a very like predominantly or heavily population Asian like US city looks like. I'm sure San Francisco is thinking like, oh my gosh, like this incredible like tourist money is really at risk because of this crime. But the reality is also a little bit different. Like you can go to many places in San Francisco late at night. It's beautiful and safe, but you just got to know where to go, right? You don't go to the Tenderloin, you go to the Presidio and so forth. There's also like, I talked to like my colleagues in Asia, they want to visit like the deep South. Like, there's beautiful places in Texas, in like parts of Florida, like Alabama, but there's a lot of connotation of like, those are areas that are not very friendly to tourists is like the perception. Mm-hmm. So I almost sort of view this as an opportunity to potentially pitch this as outside in. Okay, yeah, I see. Bill, you said Louisiana, by the way. I loved Louisiana. A lot of beautiful places there too, which is just like, look, if you're like seeing a lot of international travel from like these countries, this is a way to actually help them navigate and have a safe and wonderful time in your given city, right? And sort of, I think there's just like a lot of very interesting angle on that too, and that could be one permutation. Even beyond COVID, which you started to touch on, which I thought was done very well. And to your point as well, too, as we're approaching city bureaus, we are confronting them with their numbers, not only domestically, but international as well, too, to kind of say, this is the kind of information that anyone coming to your city is going to want to know. I mean, women in particular are the largest segment of solo travelers. So immediately of mind, they want to know, where can I go? Where will it be safe for me to go? And are things open? So that's exactly what we're targeting with our product right now. Thank you. Yeah, Mike, go ahead, Elizabeth, please.
Okay. I was going to say, I think you certainly touch on these things that we're mentioning. I think I would just probably take it a whole nother level and really emphasize like COVID has really changed a lot of things. People are unclear where things are safe, what is even open, which is something you brought up after the pitch. All these questions in people's minds, and more than ever, people will need something like this. And so that's why the opportunity is now, because I think a natural question VCs might have is like, we certainly have seen many travel content things, either white labeled for travel agents or whatever, but this why now I think is actually really, really important for this and is a strong point for you. So I would just,
that's a good point. That's definitely a good point. I'll definitely look into maybe adding a slide saying as to why now and why it's crucial. And definitely at this point in time.
All right. Well, Mike, and can we hit up Christina with just one question from the audience, and then we'll open up to sort of general Q&A?
Sure. We've actually, I've something that drew my eye is a comment from Hans, who basically suggested that Christina can have a meter that's basically branded, and you brand kind of a score to each city, and you can say like, for this location or this city, here is a meter branded by you that other people can embed on their websites and can give you distribution.
That's an amazing idea. We can definitely, I would, if you have my information, let's talk offline. I would love to talk about that more.
So thank you, Hans. You can, you know how to reach out to Christina.
I got to jump on that too. So great idea, Hans. And by the way, I'll just flash the contact information for Christina so you guys can find a way to connect. Christina, an idea for you. You may want to do a physical award by region of the United States. It's like top 10 cities to visit in the Northeast, in the South, in the West, and literally send the tourist office a glass plaque of just like Viager, like top. I know it sounds kind of silly, but people love receiving physical awards like this. And I think we'll plaster that all over social media for you. And it's just like $100 a thing to all in to send the deal toy like that. But those kinds of like annual lists, I think are huge.
They're huge. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okie dokie. Well, we have Christina from Viager, Aaron from EasyNet, and Pavani from Acta Solutions. If you guys want to unmute yourself. And if this is a time we have about 6 minutes to field some questions. We're going to have to end a little bit early. Mike, do you see anything that could be appropriate for this entire panel to address, or what looks interesting out there?
One question that kept popping up is for you and Elizabeth. How do you feel about generally the level of financial details that was presented across all three companies? And where do you think startups should focus when they pitch more or less elsewhere?
Sure. I can start with this one. So I've made this reference in past chats because it's one of my favorite things. So I'm a VC, so I love Twitter. And there's a guy named Justin Can who 3 years ago wrote this tweet that said, first-time founders focus on product, second-time founders focus on distribution, right? And I actually think that all three of these founders today did a pretty good job of indicating that they have deep interest in building a going concern, not a science project. So a science project to me is just like me and Elizabeth are going to create like a robot that's going to mine like a moon on Jupiter for gold. Like, yes, I can believe that there's like $1 trillion opportunity if we figure this out. It's also going to cost us $1 trillion to do this. It's a little bit too out there for us to support in our small fund. We really like focusing on more B2B oriented or even can be consumer, but founders who are oriented towards like the seriousness of focusing on building a going concern where more money comes in than leaves over time, right? And that's the kind of like, frankly, like less sexy, but like real businesses that we like to support. So when it comes to the financials, like at the pre-seed stage, I sort of take it with a grain of salt. It's sort of just like, well, it's nice to see traction, but it's just like, there's no product market fit here at all. Come on, let's get real. I mean, like the pricing is going to change. Like the way that you sell this thing is going to change too. And that's totally fine. Right. But I think like what this all three of these founders did really well today, again, is just sort of making the case that they're being thoughtful about it. They have a thesis that seems strong, like a strong thesis that's loose, like a strong opinion that's loosely held, which is like the kind of like founder that you want, that kind of elasticity as they think about like, their traction later on. Elizabeth, do you have a better way of describing this or better thoughts?
I think if the question is like, should you do financial projections? I think my personal take is no, you shouldn't. I've never seen anybody get funding when they've shown financial projections because it's a weird Goldilocks and the Three Bears game. Like it's either you're either too unrealistic or you're not ambitious enough. I think the level that they had, was great. In fact, in some cases, I felt like, like for example, with Aaron, I totally missed how much revenue you're doing. So if you do have revenue, like, even though it's early, I would definitely mention it because that actually is a step above most companies who literally have not gotten started.
Great. And I'd like to actually stick on this theme a little bit. We have a good question from the Soapbox Project, which I will paraphrase slightly. You can talk about your market in terms of the number of people that are in it, the value of each of those people, the total capitalization of it. What is, Eric and Elizabeth, your preferred way of talking about a market as an opportunity, and in what units?
I mean, this is one where I also kind of like throw my hands up a little bit. So it's let's sort of talk about like what we need to achieve to feel a conviction to invest in a team. It's at the post money valuation we invest in a company. Do we think that this is a founding team and a market that could ostensibly reach 100x that? So if I invest in Elizabeth's business at $1 million valuation, do I think that she could eventually get a $100 million exit out of it? Why do we care about 100x? It's actually part of the mathematics that we need to make work in order to return capital back, the original capital back, which is called returning a fund to our investors, and then get into what's called carry mode, which is where we share the profits of anything beyond that. So the problem is this, which when it comes to pre-seed and seed stage startups, which is, yeah, you can make a compelling case. And I think all three did that. Like there's a real market here that's measured in the billions of dollars. Sure. But I also do think that if you enter this game as an investor, you have to be prepared for pivots, small and large. And that's something that we should welcome. Like as Aaron, Pavani, and Christina build this company, talk to tons of users, naturally the business is going to evolve, the product is going to evolve, and market is going to change possibly too slightly. An example, it could be like Aaron could discover that actually Gen X people are way better. For whatever reason, like our acquisition campaigns there are like 1,000 times cheaper and 1,000 times more like average order value. I'm willing to believe that there's like a story there, right? So when it comes to market, yeah, I'd like to see that's a big opportunity. Like if it's like a super niche thing, like I'm going to create the best pet food for lizards in the Midwest, like it's going to be hard for us to make the case to our LPs that that's like a venture backable business. But all three, I think, are made more than enough of a case. Elizabeth, do you have a comment?
I think it's really important beyond talking about TAM or total addressable market to talk about go to market. And I think all three did that reasonably well. But that is something that I generally see as a deficiency in most of the pitches that I see, which is like, how are you going to get on the first rung of this large market and get your first set of customers? And then what do you think, and this is just a guess, but what do you think is a reasonable way to at scale get them? So first you run out to 10 friends or whatever, but then like, how do you go beyond the 10 friends, do you think? And the more you can experiment, whether it's through ads or doing a partnership or whatever it is, to suggest, okay, it worked once, maybe it can work, over and over, that helps you build your story.
Yeah. Well, a big round of claps should go to Pavani from Acta Solutions, Aaron from EasyNet, and Christina from Viager. All three of you did a great job today. Thank you so much for being vulnerable with us too and taking our feedback as well. But terrific job. Thank you also to the audience for your questions. And as we wrap up, I just want to send one final shout to NetSuite for sponsoring today's session. We try to do this once a quarter. So look out for this in another quarter or so. And if I'm sure there are many questions out there for Aaron, Pavani, Christina, we shared in our previous promotion of this event, their Twitter handles. So not to blow up your spots to the three of the founders here, but like that might be one mechanism also to reach out to them if you have some follow-up questions for them. Otherwise, thanks everyone for participating today. Stay safe and we'll see you at the next session.